Well, hello. Welcome to this episode of On the Board. Don't really have too much to show you this time around, folks. In fact, I think this one's going to be a little bit shorter. As you can see, a lot of the things on the board right now are the same. I did remove the heavy metal tribute picture. The thumbnail, actually, on this video is the Jack Kirby Silver Surfer tribute. I guess you could call that a recreation, where I'm redrawing the actual panel, and then, well, I mean, a blown up version of it anyway. Pen and ink, as well as some markers for some of the straight lines and stuff. But anyway, other than that, there's only a couple of other things here I want to show you, and then I want to get into something and touch upon some videos of the past, just to give a comment or two that I think is worth noting. But right now, let's look at a couple of things here on our cap picture and this one here. Hoping, anyway, to get this one finished tonight, and I'll explain what that is going to mean. And if not tonight, hopefully by throughout the weekend. I think I can pull her off. If I can't pull that off, there's something wrong. I think it's just a matter of concentrating. If I dedicate my time to it this weekend, should be able to pull it off. But there are some issues I'm seeing with both of these that I want to just talk about briefly. So we'll take a little bit of a closer look, but I won't get into too much detail, but just give you a rough idea about what I'm looking at here. And so, yeah, first off the top, you got this, this paper is about 11 by 17, approximately. Just some stationery supplies from a local office supply store while I was doing copies. Anyway, started tacking things out on the back. This is from blown up image that I mentioned before, or sorry, it was from a smaller image blown up to this size so I could work it out. And got most of the rough work in. I got the backgrounds pretty much in there, except for a reflection in the water, which I mentioned before. But the thing that's concerning me for this weekend is, first of all, I got to get the structure of this cape completed and work out basically what I want to do there. Cape's not my big thing. I'm going to have to concentrate on that and try start working on a bit more on drapery as of such. So I'll stop being so uncomfortable with it. I'm just not familiarizing myself with it, and usually I'm just going, shooting from the hip. I'm not using references and stuff, which I think is a bit of a mistake. Some people don't feel that way. Some people feel like, well, if Todd McFarlane can do it his way with the elaborate capes, which he is known for as a specialty, when you really look at them, they're not really realistic, but I don't think Todd's strength is realism. It's more about a certain dynamic to his art and his capes, which look amazing, right? But I'm going to go for something that looks a little bit more real, because that's just the way I want to go, because I want to feel like I'm not winging something, you know what I mean? It's always kind of winging, but you know what I mean. So I want to get this restructured and get that inked in, finished in. The inking the background is not a problem. I think, like I said, most of the pencil work is in there and it's rigid. There's a few small changes I'd like to make with some of the skull sizes in the background, some of the water, the reflection, and the dark and lights in the water in this portion I want to change. But the main thing here that I want to do is restructure the top of this back here. Now, there's always the option to Kirby it, if you know what I mean. If you get the basic shape, like for example the lats and then the spinal erectors in the bottom, and put in your rhomboids in the. If you get basic shape on the outlines, you can skip all that. But I don't want to do that. I don't want to go too ripped, right? But this is all wrong. Okay, this was winged in a doodle, like I said, back in 2002, with no reference, just sitting there at the table at work and doodling. So what I want to do is, in this position, just to familiarize a bit, and I won't get too elaborate with the description, but in a position like this, you can see that the lower neck is covered up by the traps. But here you're seeing too much trap. It's unrealistic traps. So the trapezius, what it does is it heads right into the upper neck area in two tubes, but that's covered. So what I want to do is, since he's in more of a shrugging-like position, is reduce the traps and bring them up higher. And at the same time, just below them, configuring the rhomboids, perhaps a little clearer, perhaps a little duller. I'm not sure about that, but we'll see how it goes. But the important thing is to incorporate the shoulder blades realistically via into the top of the delts here, where they actually connect. Because if you remember, see, in a certain pose, the shoulder blades themselves will appear as two islands in the middle of both sides of the upper back, right? But in truth, you got to remember they are ultimately, by a little lobe, connected into the shoulder blades themselves. So I want to show that connectivity there. Maybe do some reshaping of the, like I might do something with this line down here that's not quite right on the erectors. Might want to start it here and kind of round it in instead of putting in a line which cuts into these two sections. I want to consider the bottom of the rib cage as I'm tying in those erectors and stuff. So basically, to make this drawing okay, I mean by my light, so it's not bugging me every time I look at it, I want to restructure the upper back here. And I pulled out some anatomy references in some bodybuilding books, and I'm refamiliarizing myself with that area in certain positions. Now, the shrugged position isn't exactly the position you might choose with the shoulders and arms at this in this position. Kind of, it's midway. So somewhere between the top of the movement and the bottom of that movement, meaning arms down, arms up, will be our happy medium where I can get the right contraction. And I know it sounds obsessive, but actually it's not. It's just getting things a little bit closer. Right now, it is so ridiculous in here that the error without reference, that happens to me a lot when I get carried away with the pen, right? I'll go in, and that, you know, that's the thing about not using reference. I start eyeballing, right? And I'll put in the basic shapes. I can do that all day long, basic shapes, no problem. But when I start not using the reference, things can go wrong in things like the upper back, or perhaps a shape of a foot, or the way a calf and a shin interrelate, you know, things like that. That's what happens to me when I'm not using reference, right? So, but sometimes it just all comes out equal and great, and I don't have to change a goddamn thing. But in this case, I really, since this upper back of our bad guy here is so prominent in the drawing and to the foreground, I want to get it right, so it doesn't throw the viewer's eye off from, our girl here focusing just a little bit forward, right, in front of our villain here. So we don't want to distract from that, that angle of vision, if that makes sense. But yeah, so I want to do that. Other than that, there's something else I decided to do. As I said, I removed the heavy metal piece off of there because it's ready for me to look at for coloring. Actually, a lot of people might have noticed that with that one, there's not a lot of deep blacks in it like the standard comic book work. That's because it's basically a recreation of the actual movie, which doesn't use a lot of blacks and stuff, but certainly uses a lot of color. So I'm not sure how I'm going to go about that. But there's that. Anyway, hold still here. It's not quite what I had in mind. I wanted to show something about what's going on over here. What you're at... These are a rough pencil drawing, but what you're really looking at here, what I'd like to show is that I've spliced some of the stationery together to give me this, poster size kind of look paper. Because I'm doing it, I guess I'm trying to, prove one of those points again about cheapness of material doesn't really matter. I do have some higher quality paper that is bigger than this, right? But this sketch idea, it came out the way it did, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I'll splice some paper together and just go with that. You can't really... I brought the brightness down in the video so that you might be able to see the pencil work there, but it's really hard to see. Tell you what. Well, anyway, let me tell you what it is. You can Google this or check this out for yourself, but it's it is a... I guess it's going to be a recreation or my blown up version of a particular comic book cover from the Bronze Age in the early 70s. It is Captain Marvel number 29, which is just an incredibly dynamic cover. Very simple rendering, a foreshortening on the two legs and the feet, showing that, but just a dynamic, great cover illustration of our hero boy here. I'm going to bring this up a bit closer to see if I can get some clarity on some of the pencils. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you can kind of see it here. Let me see if I can play with the brightness and see where we go from there. Yeah, you can kind of see see, you got the torso and the legs down below, and there's a crease right through his face under his nose there. But that's the best I can do right now until I get an overall line around the figure. You know, that's about as clear as it's gonna. Yeah, about as clear as it's gonna get. What I'll probably do is overall like a Manili one time around with a fine liner. You know, I say that now, but a lot of times what happens is I'll get carried away and I'll start inking in my dark inks. It's going to go the way it's going to go. If something looks solid and it doesn't need to be messed with, there's often a chance that, like say I was working on a section and I'd look at this arm and I'd say, well, there's nothing here that can go wrong. I'll end up brushing in my outlines or putting in my deeper blacks and detailing things out, you know. Going thicker with my outlines on the title block and stuff like that. But we'll see how that goes. Looking forward to it. If anyone knows or is familiar with that cover shot, it's just great. It's just a great one. I don't know. In the 70s, as a kid, I always thought he was like one of the coolest looking heroes out there, right? And it was more of a 70s thing, you know. I think so. What kids were thinking was cool looking at that time, including, of course, the shag haircut. Can't get around that, right? Anyway, so that's with that. Now I want to touch upon something a little bit different. Yeah, now, a while ago, I reposted a video. You can find it with this thumbnail. It's on the board, number 3. And it was originally posted back in 2024. But I remember taking notice of something that I didn't quite understand and I didn't quite slow down enough to investigate. But I have. And I just want to touch upon a subject here. One of the things I had noticed is that the video was suggested to be for people 18 and over. Now, at first I thought it was because I was cursing and swearing, right? Well, a long while afterwards, I thought about it, and I thought, what are you talking about? People are swearing like crazy on YouTube without those considerations. And then I thought, oh, I know what it is. Now, I'm not thinking about the age thing at all at this point, but I realized, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Some of this artwork, it involves nudes, you know? And I thought, well, maybe that's it. That's why, right? I think I figured it out, but I'm not quite sure. I think it has to do with one of the pictures actually showed frontal nudity. Nothing extreme or pornographic or anything like that, but they were all just straight line drawings. I think I've shown one of my paintings from the back of a female bodybuilder. That's not the same number, I don't believe, on the board. But anyway, I started looking at that and I thought, wait a goddamn minute. Like, it was my knee-jerk reaction, right? I'm like, you're telling me that now paintings and drawings showing a nude are going to get banned on YouTube? And I'm thinking, Wait a goddamn minute. Wait a minute, that can't be right, because there's plenty of that. There's a plenty of art and artists and people demonstrating comics that show such drawings on YouTube all the time. And they're not marked the way this one was. Then I considered it, right? And I'm thinking, there's something not right here. Like, and I asked the question, right, in thinking a pinned comment, something like, when in the history of Western civilization did we start saying that art showing nudes could not, there was censorship and banning and stuff. And, my mind started jumping to conclusions and thinking, well, who is doing this on a worldwide scale? Like, where is this pressure coming from? Are we going back to the Middle Ages? I mean, are we going to get dragged back by a primitive culture globally where we can't express freedom? Look, there's a lot of things that seem to be on the cutting board. But then I thought about it, and I thought, well, you know what? I would have to agree that perhaps, now that's going to be up to parents themselves, that perhaps the nude body is not, you can decide whether or not that's appropriate for younger viewers. Well, the funny thing about that is younger viewers have less shame for nudity than the parents ever will. You know what I mean? It's really but whatever. I'm just saying that along those lines, I could accept that and say that anything that's going to be showing that, just to, if it's a repost or if it's posted up in the future, just say, yeah, okay, for 18 years and older, if it's showing that kind of nudity. I'm not sure how I feel about that, since there are basically thousands, if not millions, of videos showing art, both from famous people and private people showing the nude. These particular pictures, you'll find they're female nude. And I thought about that too. Imagine it was a male nude. Probably wouldn't get a twitch in an eyebrow. Nothing. You know what I mean? And I don't even want to get into the why that is and why that would be acceptable. But, the other suspicion I had was that it really wasn't really about YouTube at all. I think it very much could have been some disgruntled loser that I might have had words with or something like that, who was looking for a way to send out a message to YouTube to give me or someone else a hard time or whatever. Well, that's what losers do, right? And it's usually coming from behind. So I guess I can't exactly resent YouTube. A lot of times people have the option to push back on bullshit like this, and they simply show that what they have shown or what they're presenting isn't really that inappropriate, and that YouTube was simply responding to someone's complaint or report or whatever, and they hold it up there for the creator or whomever to protest against and prove their case, and they usually win. But you know what? I couldn't be bothered, and I thought, well, you know what? If that kind of element is out there, what are you going to do? I'd just say, suck a lemon, all right? Like, you know what? Because I think people that do that, it has nothing to do with nudity or age groups. It's just trying to put pressure on, people that you disagree with, whatever. But I don't think it's really worth the fight. I'm just going to present what I present, and if YouTube makes those calls but still decide to present the work, I'm good. Whatever. Sure, paint it up any way you want. But I don't think it's coming directly from them all the time. I could be wrong. I didn't pick up the challenge. I said, oh, well, I can get that. Whatever. I'll just have to remember that. Any nudity shown. Perhaps check that slot. Check that box before I go and upload. Yeah, so that's that topic. If you have an opinion about it, go ahead, let me know. I think it's kind of strange, but I'm willing to abide. Now, the other issue I just want to touch upon is in regards to, well, this is a thumbnail from I think it was an On the Board episode, maybe 6 or 7? 6, I believe. 6 or 7. I think 6. But anyway, that was back in January. And at the time, I had basically gone on a little rant. What happened was, before I had a chance to really, go through a process with this and record it step by step, meaning showing the drawing in stages, as I usually do on the self-indulgence series, right? Where I'll show you a rough sketch, and then I'll show you putting the inks in, and then take a photocopy. I use photocopies at different stages to show the progression. It's not very technical, but that's how I do it. But anyway, I did that, and I explained that this was returning back to the idea of the all-nighter. I think I started at like 9:30, and then, finished around 7:30 in the morning. So 9:30 at night, and then 7:30 in the morning, I knocked it off. And I had to get it to someone who had asked about it, and this and that. But during that a little explanation and diatribe, whatever you want to call it, I had spent some time making some references to some things, an individual or two who, I was taking issue with. And I think that got me into a little bit of trouble, because after that, I started receiving indications that some people weren't pleased. Not just in the community, but I guess, other people that would take the time to post comments. Not so much directly, because a lot of these people whom I feel are weasels don't do that. They weren't doing that. They go back to their channel and mention this and that, and that's, you hear this, the concept of the whisper community and shit. That's not just a YouTube thing, folks. That's a fucking reality out there, all around you. And you've got to figure out who those people are in your communities. I mean, you're talking to a guy who has a neighbor with a fucking camera pointed at his door. You know what I mean? Sick people. But anyhow, the point was, after I made the comments I started receiving a little bit of pressure from the community as well as from YouTube. And not really so much as warnings, which I have had in the past. But, admittedly, I was rancid on this when I got going. And I was referring to, part of it I'll tell you, I was referring to an individual out there. I'm not going to mention names this time, and I didn't mention names then either. Sometimes I think when I'm talking shit about someone, I'll go as far as to mention perhaps initials and stuff like that. But I don't really believe in directly assaulting someone socially. I just don't, I get the point across to that person. I don't care about communities. See, unlike some of these people, I don't need the community to help do my so-called dirty work when I'm going to fucking chew out someone's asshole, right? Chew them out a new asshole, if you know what I mean. Like, give them shit, tell them what I think, put them down and tell them why and all that. I don't need the fucking community to help me do that, okay? I make sure the person gets the message in a very direct way. Because as far as I'm concerned, something like that, that's between me and him. If the rest of the community wants to jump in there and they find it controversial, and some assholes even want to make it, so anything to boost their channel, oh, isn't that fun and they can go ahead. But after I'd done that, and, I saw this individual as kind of, rather pragmatic and kind of phony, not too concerned with doing investigations or doing your homework, fact-checking and that stuff, because it's not really important to him. What is important to him is controversy, and I get that. He's constantly doing things to boost his channel, but not a very honest individual, and kind of ruthless in the pursuit of boosting his channel, to the point where, how do I put this? Since I'm not mentioning names, and there are several that are responsible for this. I think a lot of people in the comic book and science fiction and gaming community know about some of these individuals. But I actually believed he was a serious contributor to some pressure that was put on a comic book artist that ended up taking their life last year. that's a whole other topic altogether. In the sense, I mean, how I felt about that, etc., etc. I've expressed it in the past, mostly in comics, not too much in the videos, but mostly in the comments section. But I believe that entirely, and there are quite a few of them. And there's one son of a bitch out there I'd like to wring his neck too socially, but that's not my thing. But I'll just put it this way, without names. Dude, you're not my boy, okay? And you picked that up at the time of that man's death when you heard someone using that term. Not your boy. You're just as guilty as running Ed's name through the mud as anyone. And then you immediately changed gears upon his death. That was ridiculous, you know? You're scum to do that sort of thing to someone. But anyway, I think the community is becoming a lot more aware, and they're starting to separate people from deeds. But we're talking about a lot of people that don't fucking know any better. But anyway, what I did, instead of simply getting into detail and explaining the obvious, how that it was inappropriate and that, I just attacked him for his work. And I attacked him for the fucking phony artist that he was pretending to be out there. Bullshitting people, acting like he knew what he was doing, and not only that, but being completely delusional with the work. The kind of guy that, I could sit down and work with and tell you, okay, I know the mistakes you're making here, let me show you. But a person who says they're dedicated to learning and getting better, but they're never going to really do the work. They don't understand the illustration aspect, and therefore it just won't happen. They think if they just sit down and do whatever they do over and over again, they'll simply get better. But whatever. I wanted to nail them on that. To say, how does that feel? You know what I mean? Someone took their life because of pressure that you were dishing out. And, I know it probably weighed heavily with you, and maybe it even shocked you when it came to light what had actually happened to that young man. And you helped contribute to the ruination of something that was really groundbreaking on Cartoonist Kayfabe. What a team. Jim and Ed, and some of the best interviews up to date of some of the greatest. And you can compare those interviews with other people doing interviews, and the way they would dig into the work and actually investigate and look at the craft itself for what it was, and looking at actual techniques and asking the best questions. And they were growing. And Ed was growing, and he was reaching out. And some of the losers were getting left behind, and they didn't like it. Well, maybe if they spent a bit more time working on their shit. Like, Ed was realizing it was all about becoming a workhorse. And it was about a body of work. And he was doing the shit while other people were talking shit. Well, fuck them. That's a totally different thing. But anyway, I got a little hot on that. And I think a lot of people out there took it more personal than they should have. They thought, I was just talking about any shitty artist out there, and you're not being nice, guy, and that's not positive. And it's like, oh, shut up. You get sick of it. But no, that was never the case. It was for a particular individual, and it was also for a particular group of people out there just living on shit and gossip and chit-chat and whispers in the back communities. And it involved other things, the shuffling of cards, etc. And all that community took offense, and because basically what they were doing, it's wrong. It doesn't matter if you're for the person or against the person, but that kind of fucking social backstabbing and creeping in on people's privacy is just wrong. But you come from a fucking time and group, and I'll just say it, class, that fucking doesn't know any better. And so, I spent some time lashing out there. And, of course, when you don't identify the actual people you're talking about, there's going to be a chance that a lot of the people out there that hear the message think you're talking about them. And then, of course, there was flack from other people, creators who were saying things like, this is... Oh, God, how can I put this without puking? It keeps getting back to the simple-minded negative and positive. You're being negative, guy, or you're being positive. Like, just dim-witted, right? The angel on one side, the devil on the other, right? They're stupid. Like, they think they're being intelligent, right? Because they think it's all about politeness, but at the same time, they're not really exercising any real discernment on any issue. They don't understand that each case and each situation is different and it's worth investigating. But no, it's all about feelings and how, wipe your own ass, okay? Get out of my face. I'm not here to be your friend and I'm not here to be your enemy. When I go up and put this shit up there, although I've expressed that, I think it's great when I get support from people who might subscribe or give a like or whatever. That's wonderful. Maybe not so much on this channel, hint hint. But anyway, that's all well and good. But as I've stated so many times in so many situations, I don't care about the channel. It's not doing well anyway as far as hits and that sort of thing goes. But you know what? My point was having a platform to put the stuff up there, and it'll be up there and it'll stay up there as long as I'm not too offensive and as long as I'm not bursting too far out of the boundaries of what is acceptable to YouTube and the community. And I'll continue to put things up there. I'm not here to be your friend. And I'm not here to song and dance and sell myself, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. I'm saying that that's what most creators want. That's how they gauge who's winning, who's losing. But I'm not here to join your fucking community. Capiche? I'm not here to destroy your community. Capiche? I'm here to put my shit up there and wipe your face in it sometimes when people get out of line with me. Whatever. I don't care. I mean, I want to be able to maintain the platform, but that's it, okay? My goals aren't the same. I'm not going to make money on a goddamn channel. I'm not. That's not going to happen. Because my anonymity is a factor as well. So if I go ahead and put in the work and get a graphic novel done or paintings and I sell a painting privately, whatever, as I've done in the past, that's what I will do. I don't need to say, hey world, take a look, right? No, I don't think that's in the cards for this particular individual. But if people can pull that off, which they can, I think it's great. They do it on Facebook and all types of different platforms, right? But that's what artistic life has become for a new generation of social media. And, I get it. Hey, more power to you. Not fucking interested, though. Any more than I'm interested in rendering my work on a Mac. Okay? This is old school stuff. It ain't for everybody. And it's actually probably not for very many people. But I don't care. Just want to put my images up there. But anyway, I would just like to take the time to express something about when this was posted and that it was to particular individuals and that some of the individuals that were offended need not be, because it wasn't directed at them as a whole. And don't give me your fucking speeches about being positive or negative, okay? I don't buy it. It's a bunch of horse shit. But I understand there's a pragmatic factor that involves those sort of mindsets. And I totally understand it. I'm not saying you're just up there kissing people's ass, but you're trying to make it like a common sense thing. You want to turn it into like a fucking what do you call it? Like a karma thing. You get what you get out. And, you know what? It's a bit more complicated than that. And most of the people kicking around that bullshit tend to know that, who are doing well on a channel anyway. What can I say? Pragmatism is important. Getting along with your community is important. But if your politeness and your approach is insincere, well, I don't want any part of it. I get it, and I won't judge anybody for using it, but don't tell me what to fucking do. And that reminds me, anybody else out there getting sick about being told what you can do and what you can't do and how skill doesn't matter and this doesn't matter and that doesn't matter and this is how you do. Don't fucking tell me, all right? I don't want to hear it. I don't need to hear it. I don't need you. In the sense that I'm not trying to get where you're getting or where you've arrived with your channel. And I don't care. I'm not here to suck off a community. Okay? I'm not here to put them down. I'm just here to put the work up there and talk shop once in a while if people want to, and tell them things that I think might help them here and there. But I'm not going to break my ass or fall over backwards trying to do that or gain their popularity or acceptance. Okay? And it's not a rebellion thing. It's just I see it for what it is. It's like these bullshit resumes that are going out where people are getting jobs based on the words they use. It's not real. And your digital selves, in a way, can go fuck themselves. I don't know what to say, but in a way, I get it. It's not a put down. I'm not out to destroy that whole motivation and the way people are doing things. But no, stop asking me to do it that way. I don't care. And I think a lot of people feel that that's a hard pill for them to swallow. It's like, oh, well, we all want money, don't we? We want, those e-transfers coming in our emails to get paid. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess. But I know it's hard to believe, but some of us aren't willing to do the things that it takes to get there. Some people will look at a guy trying to start a channel and think, oh, you're just not confident to go in for... No, it's not about confident. Do I sound like an unconfident person? Do I sound like a person that can't express themselves? No, you don't know. And you need to stop fucking guessing. Go by what you see. Go by what you hear in the videos, okay? But don't guess. And don't fucking snoop. And best of all, if you've done those things, don't fucking waste your time apologizing to me. I wasn't listening to you then, and I'm not listening to you now. It's not, but that's the most important thing. For the people that those comments weren't directed at, you have no reason to be offended by that. If you knew who I was talking about, and I pointed it out, and I explained it, you might see things a little bit differently. But don't give me the fucking speeches about positive and negative. It's nowhere, Jack. It's childish. I know it's mass, though. It's mass. It's mass. And it's massively accepted that this kind of thinking is absolute. It's not. All right? It's an argument that can be debated, but people don't want to hear it. I don't want to make that debate. I'm just saying, no, it's not as simple as how things are making you feel. I'm not here to please you. I'm not here to offend you. But some people deserve offending, and once in a while I'll go on a rant. That's all it is. So whatever you've determined or you've collectively gotten together and discussed, that's entirely up to you. But I've noticed where that kind of shit comes from and how it clusters. People get a little nervous and they start clustering together and decide that they're going to, but some of them just, I'm sorry, they just suck as artists or whatever. They build up their channels, and that's great. But I'm not here to insult them in that way for the sake of insulting them. I'm not. It's, some of them just happen to show a maliciousness that it's ever prevalent, and it's more and more in these days. And these are wicked times we're living in. I don't know how to describe that without getting all preachy and religious, Some people just don't have the understanding to grasp certain concepts, and I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't understand as well, but, I don't know, this bandwagon mentality. I mean, there is a difference between pragmatism and actually pursuing the truth online and that sort of thing, but you know what? That's not my job. As an artist, I'll just take that towards my work and leave it like that. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, I did get around to laying down some colors. I just, normal stationary markers, like dollar store jobs, man. I'm telling you, from like a 12-pack or something like that. Just standard colors. I went back and looked at the issue online. I've got a copy of the Essentials, Amazing Spider-Man from this Gil Kane, or no, sorry, this is Ramita, 109. And yeah, and I looked at the colors of it online and just started doodling them up. They soaked through. But yeah, this is a photocopy shrunken down of my recreation of that panel. Let's see, what is that again? The original the original drawing was 9 3/4 by 14 5/8. Originally presented in 109. It was, I believe, what is that? God, I'm getting blind in my old age. I can't even read that. It says panel 1. Yeah, panel 1 of page 11 by John Romita anyway. But there it is. The colors came up pretty nice and stuff. And you know what? It was really weird. I've decided like that when I apply colors with, say, a marker, I'll apply them to the photocopy of my inks, which this is, right? And then just color over from there and go like that. So that's what I did. And there it is. Anyway, I realized that I had shown the drawing before, before these colors were applied, but I didn't show the colors. And there they are. Worked out all right. Kind of look okay. But there you have it. Well, that's what's going on right about now.